Good Monday, everyone, and welcome to the 17th episode of the Southern Conservative Podcast. My name is Ty, and this podcast is being brought to you from the People's Republic of Maryland. I will be returning back to South Carolina tomorrow. There will be another podcast tomorrow, but expected to be after midnight before the podcast has been posted. I hope everyone has been following the Facebook page since we last were with each other on Wednesday. As a reminder, you can go to facebook.com/southernconservative, that's facebook.com/southernconservative, and catch up on the important news of the day by reading articles that I post to the page. Most of what I talk about in my podcasts are from articles that I post to the Facebook page. Now, before we get into the big issues that I want to talk about today, let me first address the whole Rob Porter issue. The left wants a whole investigation into the matter. They don't think Trump takes domestic violence seriously. They want Chief of Staff General Kelly out. And this is all, folks, just really a distraction that the president does not need right now. Look, I seriously doubt the president condones this sort of behavior. Just because the president doesn't come out and denounce this behavior doesn't mean he supports it either. But when you look at this story, it appears to me that the people who have the power to do something, in this case either General Kelly or President Trump, they were not made aware of proof of domestic violence until just recently. And once the photographs surfaced on Porter giving his ex-wife a black eye, Kelly asked for Porter's resignation in less than an hour. I think Kelly handled the situation well. I can't imagine Kelly wanting to keep Porter around knowing that he had done this. And you can't just let go of someone from mere allegations. And I think that was the message Trump was trying to send in a tweet he made over the weekend that everybody just went nuts over. Look at all of the allegations that have been levied against the president. The biggest is collusion with Russia, to which there still isn't any proof after more than a year of investigating. There are also all sorts of allegations that were made against Trump in the Steele dossier, including hookers urinating on a bed at a hotel in Moscow. Then there were the sexual assault allegations made against the president during the 2016 campaign. Now, folks, I'm a millennial. In fact, the whole reason I'm in Maryland is because this is my birthday weekend, and I actually just turned 29 years old on Sunday. But I'll leave it up to the older listeners to decide if they have ever seen a president of the United States attacked in the way that Donald Trump has been attacked. Not to mention the attacks that have been levied against his family. So I just find this whole Rob Porter thing really, folks, to be a non-story, other than to say that what Porter did is absolutely despicable, and I'm glad to see that he's no longer working alongside the president. The only other thing that could come out of this, again, is the people who needed to see these photographs, who needed to know about Rob Porter, and needed actual proof, not just mere allegations, would have been Chief of Staff General Kelly or President Trump. And it seems like these two men weren't made aware or weren't shown this proof until recently. And once they found out about it, they quickly asked for Rob Porter's resignation, and they got the resignation, and he's gone. So I'm glad to see that he's out of the White House, but I think attacking General Kelly, calling for a massive investigation, asking for Kelly's resignation, I think is just over the top. All right, now let's get into that massive spending bill that Congress passed in the early morning hours on Friday that President Donald Trump in turn signed very quickly. If you're a true conservative like me, you should be absolutely outraged over this massive spending package. Yes, it funds the military, and I'll get into that in just a bit. But look at all the other pork barrel spending using money that we don't have. We're $20 trillion in debt, folks. $20 trillion in debt, and it's only getting worse. And the deficit this year is projected to be anywhere from $1 trillion to $1.2 trillion. And this doesn't even include the trillions of dollars in unfunded liabilities when you consider Medicare and Social Security payouts. Now, as a Republican, although not officially a Republican on paper because I live in South Carolina and in that state you don't register with a party, but as someone who aligns with the Republican Party, I'm absolutely ashamed. I mean, this used to be the party, folks, that embraced conservative principles. Well, all of that went out the window Friday if it hadn't already been thrown out the window. Now, you look at all of this spending and all of this debt, and you couple that with the fact that the economy is doing well despite what you see on Wall Street. And a lot of the panic that you see on Wall Street has been spurred by an overdue correction. I mean, the stock market took off like a rocket in a rather unnatural way. And the fact that as the economy booms and you start to have a shortage of available labor, wages are forced up, but you also see interest rates forced up as well. And with the Fed considering an additional interest rate hike on top of what's already been announced, investors are thinking of turning away from stocks and putting some money into bonds. But with those rising interest rates, that's more that the United States has to pay back on an ever-increasing debt. Washington has got to get spending under control. Now, as far as the military goes, I'm all for funding the military and modernizing the military and our nuclear arsenal. I'm a big believer in peace through strength, but we could have funded the military without all of the other increases in domestic spending. And I'm tired of hearing the excuse that Republicans only have this 51-vote majority in the Senate. I want to make 2 points about that. First, if Democrats didn't want to go along with it, if they didn't want to go along with just funding the military, then shut the government down again. Look at all of the times over the years the government has been shut down. It was shut down under Reagan, shut down under Clinton, shut down under Obama, shut down under Trump. And what epic disaster resulted from not having the government open? I mean, the last time the government shut down back in January, it was shut down for 3 days, a Saturday, a Sunday, and a Monday. And that Monday was Martin Luther King Day, a day when the federal government is shut down anyway. So no one noticed it, folks. And when the government shut down for about 2 weeks in 2013 when Obama was president, did the world come to an end? I mean, all those workers who were furloughed, they got their back pay. I mean, it was a glorified vacation for them. The Republicans should have done exactly what they did over the whole DACA debate back in January. The Democrats shut down the government over illegal immigrants, and they caught hell for it for not standing up for American citizens. And they voted to fund the government without DACA 3 days later. If the Republicans would have introduced a bill to keep the government open and fund the military without all of the additional domestic spending, let the Democrats vote that down, cause it to fail in the Senate, shut that government down, then tell the country that the Democrats don't want to fund the military, and then they would have turned right back around and they would have voted in the similar way that they did in January. They would have voted for the bill. Better yet, and what I'd like to see happen, I'd actually like to see the Senate take up the appropriations bills that have been passed in the House, all 12 of them, to fund each segment of the government the way the appropriations process was intended, the way the government is supposed to be funded. Not with these stupid continuing resolutions we've been working off of now for years. I'd also like to see Mitch McConnell get off his ass, get rid of the filibuster rule requiring 60 votes to invoke cloture and end debate on a bill. If you didn't have that hurdle to get over before a bill is actually passed, the Republicans could ram through the most conservative agenda you've ever seen. But seeing as how McConnell is part of the swamp, I mean, he is the true swamp monster over in the Senate. He doesn't want to let go of his legacy in the Senate. And the filibuster rule, folks, that's only been in effect since the second half of the 20th century. Folks, it'll never change. Things in the Senate will never change. And now the president wants to talk about $1.5 to $1.7 trillion infrastructure package, in which $200 billion will be funded by the federal government. This after the hole that politicians dug for themselves on Friday. Where's this $200 billion going to come from? And you know the Democrats have already said that's not enough. They say the federal government needs to be footing much more than just $250 billion or $200 billion. Folks, it never ends. Yes, our infrastructure needs fixed. Where I agree 100% with the president is cutting the red tape and streamlining the process for permit approvals. I also believe you need to reduce the red tape on those environmental impact studies, which greatly add to the costs of public works projects. I'm not saying don't consider the environment, but streamline the process. look at the regulations that you can roll back, the ones that are absolutely unnecessary, and get rid of them. But I look at the stimulus package under Barack Obama's administration that was passed 10 years ago. Remember those shovel-ready jobs that the president later had to admit weren't so shovel-ready? Most of that $800 billion was wasted. So what do we expect to happen with this new $200 billion project? The president said he's going to give the money to state and local governments so they can decide how to best spend the money. And if projects and permits aren't approved in a timely fashion, the president says that he'll take back the money. Well, good. There damn well better be oversight in this. Anytime money is thrown around by the federal government, so much of it inevitably gets wasted. And remember again, folks, we're $20 trillion in debt, and it's going to reach $21 trillion before the year is up. We need to get our fiscal house in order. Okay, let's get into the Trump-Russia Steele dossier tangled mess. Two big stories to highlight. It appears that Senator Mark Warner of Virginia wanted to have exclusive access to Christopher Steele without other members of the Senate Intelligence Committee knowing about it. Warner was in contact with a man by the name of Adam Waldman, who is a lobbyist for Russian oligarch billionaire Oleg V. Deripaska, whose visa was revoked in 2006 by the State Department for ties to organized crime. Waldman was willing to offer Warner access to Christopher Steele. In one of the text messages to Waldman, Warner wrote that he would, quote, rather not have a paper trail of his messages. Well, at any rate, Waldman turned over the text messages between him and Senator Warner to the Intelligence Committee. An aide to Chairman Senator Richard Burr of North Carolina said that Burr was aware Warner had made contact with Steele's associate, but was not made aware of the content of the messages. So what this tells me, folks, is that Senator Warner, who is no fan of Trump, may have been trying to conduct his own covert investigation aside from the Senate Intelligence Committee's investigation. At least that's how it appears to have started. Now, what's amazing about all of this is Chairman Burr put out a joint statement with Senator Warner blasting the leaking of this information. That's absolutely incredible, folks. We ought to know if there are senators or congressmen out there who are waging a personal vendetta against the president. Sure, these committees are privy to classified information, but when you have a senator trying to make contact with a man who we know wrote a dossier with money from the DNC and Hillary Clinton and produced another dossier with unsolicited and unverified information fed to him by Clinton associates, and we'll get into that next, you'll think that at a minimum, the rest of the committee would be outraged. But now you've got Senator Marco Rubio. He put out a statement that Warner, quote, fully disclosed this to the committee 4 months ago, and that the communications have, quote, had zero impact on our work. Now, I don't know how all of this sounds to you listeners out there, but it sounds to me like we have a senator who we already know is biased against Donald Trump, is putting that bias into his work on the committee. Now, this should come at no surprise, but the reaction from the chairman and Rubio is just stunning, folks. This may totally be a non-story, but it definitely gives us some insight into Senator Warner's motives. Now, I want to get into the whole Jonathan Weiner story that was in the Washington Post on Friday. Again, if you follow the Facebook page at facebook.com/southernconservative, I hope you either read the article or a synopsis of that article. I'm going to boil it all down to the simple facts because the revelations are absolutely startling, and frankly, Weiner is actually helping all of us get to another step closer to the truth in all of this. You'll remember how I talked about Devin Nunes shifting to Phase 2 of his investigation on the House Intelligence Committee, and that the investigation deals with the State Department and what they knew surrounding Christopher Steele, the dossier, and the FISA warrants. Well, one person who used to work at the State Department is a man by the name of Jonathan Weiner. He felt that he was the subject of the Nunes investigation, and he wanted to go public with his story in an effort to blunt Nunes. Well, folks, you have to piece this together with the criminal referral Senators Chuck Grassley and Lindsey Graham have sent to the FBI concerning Christopher Steele lying to the FBI. You'll remember this referral was unclassified by the FBI a week ago. However, there are still redactions, including redactions of names, surrounding a dossier Steele put together with information given to him by the State Department. Well, now we know how this information was passed around. As it turns out, the information can be traced back to Cody Shearer, a journalist and activist for Hillary Clinton. He gave information to Sidney Blumenthal, a longtime ally of the Clintons going back to when Bill was president. Blumenthal gave the information to Jonathan Weiner, who at the time was working at the State Department. Earlier reporting revealed Blumenthal was briefed on the dossier by the FBI. And we know that Blumenthal was being paid by Hillary Clinton for foreign policy advice while she was Secretary of State. Anyway, Weiner turned over the information to Steele, who then gave it to the FBI. This information was part of a memo dated October 2016, just prior to Steele being fired by the FBI. It was not part of the dossier leaked by BuzzFeed in January 2017. So at the end of the day, here's what you have. You have a dossier put together by Christopher Steele that came from Russian government sources inside Russia, according to Grassley and Graham. The FBI relied heavily on the dossier to obtain a FISA warrant, so much so that Andrew McCabe testified that had it not been for the dossier, the FBI would not have sought a warrant. Even though the FBI fired Steele because he was leaking information to the media, the FBI still felt his work prior to being fired was still credible and used that excuse in subsequent FISA applications against Carter Page, a man who so far has not been charged with anything, let alone Russian collusion. And we know the FISA court was not made aware that the dossier was ultimately funded by the candidate running against Trump for president, that being Hillary Clinton, as well as the DNC. Plus, the dossier was never independently verified by the FBI. Now, we have a paper trail showing how information originating from people close to Hillary Clinton was fed to Christopher Steele to put together an additional memo separate from the original dossier. This information was totally unverified. So not only do you have Clinton paying for information, it's also being willfully fed to Steele and not being verified. And that information is also making its way to the FBI, and the FBI included that information in FISA applications. So the article put together by Jonathan Weiner for the Washington Post actually helps out those who are trying to get to the bottom of all of this. Finally, there was an interesting story that broke today concerning a last-minute email from Susan Rice, just as the Obama administration was coming to a close and Trump was being sworn in as president. Ben Shapiro at the Daily Wire has a very concise article, and he raises some good points that are definitely worth sharing. Here's his story. Headline: On her last day in office, Obama National Security Advisor Rice sent suspicious letter about Obama, Comey, Trump-Russia collusion meeting. On Monday, the Senate Judiciary Committee Senators Charles Grassley and Lindsey Graham sent a letter to former Obama National Security Advisor Susan Rice, asking her to explain an email she sent to herself on the last day of her duty in the White House. That email was an email from Rice to Rice, and it explained that President Obama had held a briefing on January 5th regarding supposed Trump-Russia collusion. According to the letter, if the timestamp is correct, you sent this email to yourself at 12:15 p.m., presumably a very short time before you departed the White House for the last time. In this email to yourself, you purport to document a meeting that had taken place more than 2 weeks before, on January 5th, 2017. Here's what Rice wrote. On January 5th, following a briefing by IC leadership on Russian hacking during the 2016 presidential election, President Obama had a brief follow-on conversation with FBI Director Jim Comey and Deputy Attorney General Sally Yates in the Oval Office. Vice President Biden and I were also present. President Obama began the conversation by stressing his continued commitment to ensuring that every aspect of this issue is handled by the intelligence and law enforcement communities, quote, by the book. The president stressed that he is not asking about initiating or instructing anything from a law enforcement perspective. He reiterated that our law enforcement team needs to proceed as it normally would by the book. From a national security perspective, however, President Obama says he wants to be sure that, as we engage with the incoming team, we are mindful to ascertain if there is any reason that we cannot share information fully as it relates to Russia. The president asked Comey to inform him if anything changes in the next few weeks that should affect how we share classified information with the incoming team. Comey said he would. Now, Ben Shapiro writes there are several portions of this email that should be disturbing. First, why was Rice sending a memo to herself except to create a paper trail designed to paste a friendly gloss on a rather suspicious meeting? Second, how exactly would Obama have planned to prevent the intelligence community from handing over information to the incoming commander-in-chief? Trump has full constitutional power over the executive branch, including the intelligence community. Yet Obama presumably said he might want to prevent full sharing of information regarding Russia. Third, Obama said he didn't want to interfere with anything from a law enforcement perspective. But how about from an intelligence gathering perspective? Furthermore, the double emphasis on Obama stating that he wanted to proceed, quote, by the book, smacks of a bit too much protest. Did Obama really want to proceed by the book, or did he say that for effect? Grassley and Graham ask a series of questions that deserve answers. Why did Rice send the email? When was she aware of the Trump-Russia collusion investigation? Was she aware of the FISA warrant on Carter Page? Did Comey or Yates mention any media coverage of the Steele dossier? Was she aware of the Steele dossier? Were there any more meetings of this sort? The email is certainly odd. It will be fascinating to see if Rice bothers to answer the questions. Now, folks, isn't that fascinating? Now, it's too early to tell, but this could provide a gateway into exactly what Obama knew. It's up to investigative journalists to figure out what Obama knew and when he knew it. Surely he had to know that the FBI was spying on Trump associates because it would have been a matter of counterintelligence. I highly suspect that it would have been part of Obama's daily briefing. But we'll have to see, folks, where all of this goes. It's just another piece of a very big puzzle, folks. Well, that's it for today. I'll be on the road Tuesday heading back to South Carolina, so expect Tuesday's podcast to be posted late. Have a great day, everybody.